And I'm now delighted to be joined by Independent Ireland TD for Cork North Central, Ken O'Flynn. Ken, you're very welcome to the Irish Political Roundup.
Thank you.
Ken, you're a new TD. A couple of months we were chatting off air. There's a lot of things to kind of grapple with when you get elected to the Dála.
Yeah, well, look, it is a learning curve. I've had 16 years experience in Cork City Council. I worked as a PA to my father in one of his last administrations when he was in the Dail here, but a lot has changed since then. And I suppose the difference is when you're working for somebody or involved with somebody else's campaign, until it comes to your own doorstep yourself, It's very, very different. It's been exciting. It's been very frustrating. Coming from the private sector myself, when you start a job today and you get your computer, your desk allocated to you, and you're to go off and sell or whatever the job is. Here you have to email facilities and you have to email this person, and it's a procedure for this and it's a procedure for that. It's a lot of red tape. It's a lot of red tape. It's a lot of red tape we could cut out. There's a lot of expertise I come with from the private sector and running a businesses myself that could be implemented here that would make things an awful lot easier and run an awful lot quicker. But look, it is what it is. It's fine. And I'm delighted and privileged to be here. It's tremendous. I remember my first day sitting inside in the chamber and kind of like, you almost have to pinch yourself and say, geez, did I really get here? So it's an honour. It really is.
Absolutely. And as you said, there's a lot. When you're in a building like this, a parliament like this, there's a lot of procedure and things like that. And I was just looking there recently, the Social Democrats and the Labour Party have put a proposal to remove prayer from the start of all sessions, and that's something that you have taken. You're not particularly in agreement with. In fact, you're actually wearing some ashes on you for Ash Wednesday.
Well, we had mass inside in the Dáil today. Actually, we had mass inside in the County dining room, which was organised by members for those that like to practice. Look, the reality for me is, this shouldn't be the biggest issue on the Labour Party and SOCDEM's agenda. I think there's a lot more important things for us to discuss inside in the House and to get right inside in the House. Talking about health and talking about housing, and talking about delivering infrastructure, transport around the country, the amount of children that are waiting on CAMS lists. So for this to be the top of their priority, for me, just says an awful lot about them and what they're after and what they want to achieve or what they want to do with the country. I think the irony wasn't lost on me, because if I recall that the last Dáil, when it sat, had a delegation from a Muslim group, and 10 minutes of Muslim prayer was used in a committee room. Not one of the Labour Party or SOCDEMs objected to that. Right? Nobody objected to that. But they seem to have a huge problem when it comes to anything Christian. Like this idea of we should be a circular society. That would not reflect Ireland correctly, to my mind. Most of my constituents identify as Christian. Right? I identify as a Catholic. Maybe a lapsed Catholic, a bad practicing Catholic. Many of us are, But the reality is that, we have a tradition here. I don't see them looking to ban Muslim prayer. I don't, we've accommodated all religions and none in the previous Dáil by providing a 30-minute or 30-second moment of reflection in Leinster House to allow those of all faiths and none to reflect on. The important thing for me about this prayer, and, I do see myself as a Christian person, as a spiritual person, as I said, maybe a bad Catholic, but, there's a line in that where it says, let us to be directed by thee and through thee. And for me, that's a very powerful line, because it reminds me of that we're here to serve a higher power. We're here to serve the state. We're here to serve the people of the state. We're here to do good for our fellow human beings and to represent their views in the House of Parliament. That's what it reminds me of. That's what I take from the prayer. Other members may take nothing, other members may take something. But I think for the Labour Party and for the agenda from Labour and SOCDEMs, who are pretty much the same thing. Right? It's Labour and Labourella. That to be the highest point of their agenda for the country. It sets the benchmark very, very low of what's on their agenda. But it's worrying. Because this idea of secularism being brought into the state, pushing for... it seems to me at times that we're pushing everyone who is Christian, pushing everybody, and we're trying to make allowances to look like the good guy. And being the good guy and looking like the good guy,
they're two totally
can be very, very different things.
And from what I can see, it is a very busy place, Dáil Eireann. There's a lot of hustle and bustle, and having those minute or two just to kind of reflect and kind of get yourself in a space, which, because you are doing serious work, that has impact on people's lives. So having that time to reflect is important as well.
I've written to the County Council. I've suggested that we have a space for reflection ourselves. Just a small cupboard in the buildings that we occupy here that could be used by members as a prayer room. I've also suggested to the County Council as well that we have a baby feeding room.
Yeah,
because there isn't baby feeding room for members of the house or for their staff. And an awful lot of people are doing that, and it's main practice in Europe. So I'm not this Philistine coming down as the Soc Dems and Labour would like to make me out to be, that I'm this hard right Catholic type of character that they like to make me out to be on the mainstream media at times. I'm progressive in how I think, but I'm also believe in our traditions. And I believe that people of this country believe in our traditions as well. And I think it's very important that we hold on to our identity, we hold on to our culture. We seem to be misplacing ourselves and being upsetting people, we seem to be upsetting the Soc Dems and people like that when you talk about your own culture and preserving your culture. It's everybody else's culture is fine, just yours isn't.
Exactly.
I don't get that. I don't understand it, and I'm not interested in understanding it.
It's a fair point. And in leaders' questions, there was a number of questions asked on special education and needs. I'm sure you're seeing it every day in your constituency office. There was a lady, parent referenced in Cork, who has been turned down for 29 schools to get a place for her son. She's also looked as far as Laois and Kilkenny to find a school place in 2025, when we have massive surpluses of money according to the Department of Finance. That shouldn't be happening.
Absolutely not. And it's not an isolated case. The reality for me is, as a TD, you're meeting parents all the time that can't get children's places, that are ringing the 29, 30, 40 schools that are. I have a lady who travels 40 minutes to bring her son to school and 40 minutes back to her house.
Wow.
And then does the same run again at 3 o'clock in the day, or at the 2:30 to 3 o'clock in the day.
Wow.
So that's roughly from my house in Mallow to Leinster House. She spends the same amount of time that I do driving on a Tuesday to Leinster House.
Wow.
Where is think about that woman's mental health.
Yes,
alone.
absolutely.
Think about the responsibility. She can't hold down a full-time job.
No,
because of what she's doing. You're then depending on carers, and you're depending on this payment and that payment and the other payment. You've been ran through the ringer because of what your husband is getting or your partner is getting. Everything. When you're looking after a child with special needs, whether it's mentally ill or physically ill, or that the special needs when it comes to their education that need extra attention. God knows you have enough on your plate for your kids, with your kids, and trying to look after them and trying to encompass the rest of the family, which quite often parents are trying to do.
Yes.
And then the government is sending a document saying fill out this and fill out that and fill out the other. That, to my mind, is absolutely barbaric. That's Dickensian sort of carry on.
And the Taoiseach, Micheál Martin, said that special educational needs is a fundamental and big priority for this government.
Yeah, but he says
are you seeing any evidence?
If Micheál Martin told me that it was raining, I'd go out and buy sunscreen, right? Because the man will tell you, this has to be addressed, that has to be addressed. We're on it, we're doing this, we're going to address this, we're going to fix that. And still, nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. The only thing that has changed is that there's a new scandal every couple of months from the OPW.
And that's actually interesting when you talk about OPW and that's an organisation that knows how to spend money. The technical group that you're part of, the independent, you had a motion
a motion to the floor today on waste and
government efficiency.
And for us, I suppose, since the conception of the party over a year ago, we've been talking about government waste. We've been identifying government waste both in HSE, OPW, which we now affectionately call in my constituency the Office of Public Waste.
Okay.
But that's what it's become. You read this over and over again. You see things that's happening in the Arts Council, 6.7 million being spent on an IT system not being used. Imagine how many people could have been housed for that.
Yeah.
How many operations could have been done for that. And yet we can find money for all these projects and waste money. But you go off then and you look at what the government did in the health sector, where they cut the 50%. They cut 50% off the budget for people getting cataract operations in Northern Ireland or in the UK. So the cross-border treatment. They cut that.
Yes.
But yet you can find 6.7 million for the Arts Council not to use a computer. You can pay €7,500 for somebody to have a going away party who's in the GoPW. You can go off and you can buy a bike shed. And as you can see behind me here is the original place that you have the bikes in Leinster House, which I'd say that cost maybe €3,000 or €4,000. That's what I paid for it anyway.
Yeah.
And you go out the front door here, which is Merrion Street, and you see this huge bike shed that costs €366,000. Now I'm looking at this and I'm saying that's a 4-bedroom house.
Yes.
Like it just beggars belief. But you go to the other side of it, and you see that they spent €120,000 on charging points for electric vehicles. Like this spending, like drunken sailors on shore leave, has to stop. And nobody is being held accountable for it. Yeah. And there was an organisation at one stage that the government had funded. So they funded this organisation called Benefax. And Benefax cost about €6 million to set up and to run. And it ran extremely efficiently. You were able to track everything from A to Z, who was on state boards, who was receiving who, where money was going, how it was going. It was so good that the government shut it down.
Yes.
And why did they shut it down? Because there was popping up too many questions and too many red flags for them. Because the public were able to hold them to account.
Yeah.
Opposition was able to hold them to account. And the press were able to hold them to account. And yet they closed it down. And then, to add insult to injury, they added another $250,000 to pay for the wind-up of this organisation. Doesn't make sense.
And we have a Department of Public Expenditure and Reform, and that's one of
where the buck should stop.
So but clearly it's not happening.
No, it's not working. It's not working. And, we wouldn't be looking for somebody outside the Controller and Auditor General, or we wouldn't be looking for somebody outside public accounts, if it was working correctly and if everything was being accounted for. And I'll tell you what, like I deal with small organisations in my constituency, from Mallow to Blackpool, from Ballincollig over to Little Island. And you're talking about people that are dependent on small grants to run an organisation. €4,000 or €5,000 sort of grants. They have to account for the box of biscuits.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? To get this government funding or this funding that comes through local authorities or whatever. They have to account for everything.
Yes.
And yet we're not holding our own departments to that accountability and that structure. That doesn't make sense to me. And yet you can go off and you can spend like millions of euros.
Yes.
And nobody is to blame. Nobody is to blame. Nobody is accountable. Nobody is fired. In fact, I'd say a couple of fellas are moved up the line.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll get them out of my department.
Exactly.
It doesn't make sense.
And immigration has been a really hot topic over the last number of months. We've seen the Minister for Justice, he has a flight was chartered to Georgia to deport 32 people who were here illegally. So how do you think we are faring on this issue?
I think we've been a disaster in the last two administrations. I'm delighted to see that we have a minister actually beginning to start to do something, or being seen to start to do something. I have to be fair to him. It's very early days. We'll see how he progresses. But I'm not a bit impressed that the previous government sent out the invitation in umpteen languages, inviting everyone to Ireland. Like, can I put a question to you?
Yeah, absolutely.
If you left the door open in your house,
and
there was people coming through all the time that you didn't know anything about, you didn't know who they were, and you have children in that house, and you have an elderly parent in that house, would you be worried?
Oh, you would, absolutely.
Because I'm worried about the open door.
Yeah.
I'm worried about who's coming in unvetted. And the Taoiseach made a big remark about vetted and what vetting means.
Yes.
To me, is knowing the background of the person. Now, having a small bit of experience in vetting, because I'm Garda vetted myself because of being in different organisations, but having a small bit of vetting information, like the further east you go, the less information you get from Europe. Okay. So, for instance, Britain is very good to share information. France, Spain, mainland European countries. But the more east you go, the Lithuanias, all these places, it's very hard to get information from them. And they're within the European Union.
Right.
So imagine the difficulty that you have from outside the European Union.
Yes.
So it's all very well to say that's a small proportion. But why should we accept anyone? Why should we accept anyone with a criminal record? Why do we put our citizens at risk? Why do we put people at risk and say to them, oh, well, it's only a small proportion? What's acceptable is zero.
Yes.
Zero. Like, well, God knows, we have enough of our own thugs in Ireland. Just call a spade a spade. We have some very rough and dangerous characters in Ireland. And we don't need any more of them.
And there was just a discussion on policing as well in the Dála not too long ago. So I suppose you're a proud Corkman. You have spoken about...
All Corkmen are proud.
Absolutely, yeah. we'll highlight that part there, Roisin, in particular. You've
In
spoken.
case you didn't know.
You've spoken about the Shandon clock in Cork. For our viewers, say outside of Cork, it's a very, very iconic place in Cork.
Absolutely. Well, look, I suppose the Shandon clock for me is very important. My father was born only a couple of streets down from the Shandon clock, so it's always been part of our life. Look, it's 400,000 that needs to be repaired. There's structural damage to it's an old building. There's structural damage to the tower that has to be worked on. The clock face itself, the mechanisms inside, we're talking about €400,000.
Yeah.
But it is iconic.
Yes.
And it does drive an awful lot of business up to the north side of the city. So it's not about wasting 400 grand on a timepiece. It's about putting 400 grand into your community that will pay itself back. Because what will happen is that it's a working order, the building isn't closed off, it's safe for visitors to use again. It brings money into the local economy. You buy the cup of coffee, you buy the bag of sweets down in Shandon Sweets. Big plug for Shandon Sweets, best sweets in Shandon, best sweets in Cork. Yeah. And you maybe go around to Eugene's and you have a pint inside Eugene's in Shandon Street. Or you buy a sandwich.
There's a kind of a multiplier effect.
There is, and it's a big knock-on effect. And I'm hoping that. From what I highlighted here in the Dáil and highlighted by Cork City Council, we will see sort of applications for opening up the craft centre again. To my mind, Shandon should be like Montmartre.
Okay.
And I say that as a proud Corkman.
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
Look, we have great opportunities on the north side of the city if we were allocated the correct amount of money. That's building the Northern Ring Road, building the distributor roads that we have to have, being a real counterbalanced city and having that sort of investment and bringing the tourism right up again.
Absolutely. And you represent a massive constituency. You're in Mallow and it stretches all the way up.
Well, we live in Mallow ourselves, so that's
north side of Cork.
From the north side of Cork, living in Mallow. But look, it takes me about 20 minutes from my house to Blackpool. Okay. So I'm in and out every day. It doesn't matter a damn to me. It's a big constituency, but it does give you a very good read and feed of what's happening in Ireland, because you have about 60% rural. And about 40% urban.
Okay.
And the difference is, our office in Mallow takes telephone calls from social housing to CAMS cases, dealing with HSE, to dealing with the Department of Agriculture and herd numbers. Yeah. So it's diverse, but it gives you a very good feed of what's actually happening in the country. It gives you a very good way of taking the temperature. Yeah. And I find from doing clinics myself or being out in the constituency, in particular the weekends, I meet so many people, and you get, that's where I learned. That's where everything that I bring up in this house is from a conversation I've had either in a community centre, in the pub, walking down the street of either my local town or my city centre, walking down Shandon Street, whatever, meeting people and saying, what needs to be addressed. Yeah, and that's where you that's where you connect with people.
You think that's important, because
in here is a bubble.
Can be a bubble. Yeah, I was going
to say
here
is a bubble. In here you lose all track of time, and it's a bit like Narnia in a way. You go through the wardrobe, and I went into the dining room the other day in Leinster House, and I said, is there any dinner going on? What time do you open? They said, Ken, it's 5 o'clock, we've closed. And you just kind of you don't realize how many hours you're inside, or how many hours you've been in the chamber, or you're locked away in an office, and there's lots of windows in the buildings, but you don't get the tendency to look out because you don't have the time. So you do. I like to get away from the bubble as much as I can, and you're really able to pick up the problems from talking to people, from listening to people on the street, from picking up your phone, from reading your text messages. It's not done through Twitter.
Yes,
it's not done through Twitter, and I think the Soc Dems and Labour need to learn that it's not done through Twitter.
Exactly. And you recently welcomed a number of your supporters and friends and family up here. You must be really proud of that, and I suppose that, I'm sure, is important to you. That keeps they keep you very grounded.
They keep you grounded. I can tell you, they'll put manners on you, my crowd, between family and friends, and members of Independent Ireland Cork as well. But they're a great gang. They've worked Trojan work now during the general election and local elections for me. So we had a day here in the Dáil. They all visited the chamber and the whole lot, and of course they were very, very quick to say to me, drop the airs and graces and get back to work.
Exactly.
And get back down to the constituency, and we're already organising days for canvassing and leaflet dropping already, So it's, they're very dedicated, and they're very much so. We're looking towards the next election, we're looking towards this, we're looking towards that, we're looking to what can you bring to the community, that sort of thing. They're great, they're great people. But look, we had a lovely day, and it's an immensely proud and a humbling day as well. And I have to say, like, when I came in just before Christmas into the Dáil, and like, there's funny things that happens during a general election. You're meeting so many people, but it's one particular couple stayed in my mind that I met in Eireann, and they had 2 autistic children.
Right.
And that's their story of hardship and how difficult life was for them.
Yes.
And how difficult it was for to be a parent of a special needs child. Not a mind just one special needs, 2 special needs children. And that way is always on the back of your head. They're the one thing I can take from the election that really stuck with me. The amount of parents out there struggling day to day, struggling with the carers, struggling with social welfare, struggling with forms, and just trying to look after their kids. And I think, I don't have kids myself. I see my brothers, my in-laws, I have nieces and nephews, and you'll kill for your children.
Yeah, you would, absolutely.
But you just look at how difficult life is being made for those parents and those carers. And that really, really stuck with me during this election.
The Taoiseach, Simon Harris, who's also the Minister for Defence, yesterday brought forward a memo to Cabinet about removing the triple lock. Where does Independent Ireland stand on that proposal?
We're very firmly standing on neutrality for Ireland, okay? By taking away the triple lock system, I believe we're taking one step further closer to the federal Europe kind of idea. It's funny because, they seem to have reversed roles. When Fianna Fáil was talking about this, Fine Gael were opposite. Against it. When Fine Gael was talking about it, Fianna Fáil were opposite. Look, I'd be very straight with you. I think anything that takes a step away from peace, more military, more defence mechanisms, more defence systems, leads to more problems. We should be concentrating on peace. We're a neutral country. We've never been 100% neutral. We're neutral in the sense, but we've facilitated people to fly and stop and fuel up and things like that. But I think the role that Ireland certainly needs to be taking is a facilitator for peace.
Yes.
Not being, let's get involved in the conflicts, lads.
Yes.
And by taking away the triple lock system, I have serious questions on that. And I'm very concerned.
Our defence forces have a phenomenal record abroad as regards being peacekeepers and towards humanitarian causes.
I meet many soldiers or former soldiers in my constituency that live in my constituency, and they have sterling records. I believe that our defence forces are totally undervalued.
Yeah,
totally undervalued
100%.
And not appreciated. But they have, you talk to people in the armies in different countries, and what the words they have to describe Irish peacekeeping and the way we've been perceived across the world. I don't think there's a need to change that.
Absolutely.
And it does bring up other questions in the background of what's the motivation. And I think we seriously need to look at what is the motivation here.
Yeah.
Because I see people coming into office here and they're no longer in office, and they're looking at the next job. Where is the next job for me?
Yeah.
I think we should concentrate on doing our own jobs.
Yes.
Inside here in the Dáil, whether you're a junior minister, a aTeachta, a Taoiseach, or a TD, we should concentrate on our own job rather than looking at where's the next promotion for me.
Well, Deputy Ken O'Flynn, thanks a million for taking the time to chat to us here on the Irish Political Roundup, and we look forward to speaking to you soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.